Hello there, welcome to the Football Bloc. Today we're going to look back at the two Intercontinental Playoff matches, and I'm going to look at each game and see how my predictions went. If that sounds interesting, then let's hop right into it. So the two Intercontinental Playoffs for the 2022 World Cup have officially concluded. We have all 32 teams finally set. All the groups are completely finished and all rounded out. Let's look back at these two matches and see how my predictions went. Let's also look at the matches themselves. So without further ado, let's start off with the first match. We had Peru versus Australia. Now, this match in particular was very, very close in my opinion. It was 0-0, went all the way to extra time, was still 0-0, and then had to be decided on penalties, which Australia just went through 5-4 on penalties. It went to sudden death. Now, I think overall, if you compare these two teams, I think Peru is, very much a better team. I think Peru is overall, just top to bottom, a better team. They have a better coach, better defenders, better midfielders, better attackers. Game in and game out, they're playing better opposition as well. Also, if you look at their path to qualification, I think the results, at least in 2022, lean heavily in Peru's favor. I mean, Australia just barely got to this match. Yes, they outplayed UAE, but it was still a close match. So going into this, I was like, okay, yeah, Peru, by far the better team. It shouldn't be a walkover, it shouldn't be easy, but they'll be comfortably the better team. And I severely underrated Australia because I thought they were pretty good. I thought they actually show, obviously I knew they were going to show up, but they really punched above their weight. They really expanded their potential. And I think also Peru, to a certain extent, maybe went into this match maybe a little arrogant. Maybe they underestimated Australia as well, in the sense that, they thought, okay, we were here 4 years ago, we beat New Zealand, we're better than this Australian team, this should be relatively easy for us, and it wasn't. Now, of course, this is just one game overall. Like, it's not like a home and away. Like, in that kind of format, you can have a game like this where, Peru wasn't necessarily bad, but they weren't as good as they normally are. Because then you have a second leg and you can go do your business in the second leg. This one is just a one-off. From the start of the match, I thought that Australia came off the front foot a lot stronger. They had a lot more of the possession, more of the chances, but that being said, their chances weren't particularly clear-cut chances. Peru grew into the game, but even still, I thought right at the death, Australia had some really, really close chances. Saying that, Peru had the closest chance of the entire game in extra time, where Edson Flores had a header that smacked off the post. It was so close from going in. That would have been the winner. That would have sent Peru to the World Cup. But it went to penalties. Australia surprisingly subbed off their goalkeeper and put on the substitute goalkeeper, a guy named Redmayne, and he did a bunch of theatrics in the net. He was jumping around, making silly faces and stuff. And, it worked because he saved two penalties. And now Australia find themselves in the World Cup in the group alongside Tunisia, Denmark, and France. Meanwhile, Peru go back home, unfortunately. As for my prediction, I said that it was going to be 2-0 Peru. I thought Peru was, like I said, not going to crush Australia or anything like that, but it should be a relatively comfortable win for that. And anything but that. If anything, Australia was a slightly better team. It's hard to say because it was a very tight game and it had to be decided on penalties. But if you had to choose one, I think Australia was slightly better. But in the end of the day, very unfortunate for Peru and their fans. This team, particularly in this qualification cycle, has to overcome a lot of obstacles, and it would have seemed fitting that they finally make it to the World Cup and do well at the World Cup, but unfortunately, they do not. On to the next match, we have Costa Rica versus New Zealand. And in a similar vein, I thought that this match would be, relatively easy-ish for Costa Rica. I thought that they are overall a better team than New Zealand, which I still think is true. And obviously, as good as New Zealand are in Oceania, that doesn't necessarily translate to playing other teams from other confederations and other continents, where they are no longer just the big dog, where they are often the underdogs. Now, the difference between this match and the Peru versus Australia one is both Peru and Australia seemed very, very pragmatic, very kind of reserved and calmed down. They didn't want to make a mistake. And in this match, both Costa Rica and New Zealand, where they were amped up, they were fired up. They really went for it, both of them. There wasn't a whole bunch of clear-cut chances for either team, but it was still very tense. There was a lot of fouls, there was a lot of fights, there was a red card as well. And right at the beginning of the game, Costa Rica grabbed the winner. Joel Campbell was able to latch on to the end of a cross and slot the ball far into the corner, out of the goalkeeper's hands. Very, very accurate strike from him. Not the best defending from New Zealand. But immediately from there, I felt that Costa Rica, as amped up as they were, they didn't attack as much. They didn't go forward as much as they did in like the opening 2-3 minutes. And that makes sense because obviously they had the goal. All they need is one goal. So they wanted to just simply protect their lead. And then that kind of invited New Zealand on. And New Zealand throughout the rest of the match had more of the possession, more of the chances, more of the shots. Like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of clear chances, but New Zealand did put on a lot of pressure, particularly immediately after they conceded. They had a few shots that went over or that were saved by Keylor Navas. They had a penalty shout as well. They even scored a goal, actually, but it was disallowed. And in my opinion, I think it was rightly disallowed. There was a lot of controversial refereeing decisions in this match, but in my opinion, I think the referee actually made the right decision in each of those controversial ones, with the disallowed goal, not calling the penalty, and then also the red card. I think those three, he actually made the right decisions, even though it was, of course, controversial in a big game like this. Now, into the second half, New Zealand hit another obstacle because one of their players got sent off. As I said before, I think the red card was very deserved, but still, now they were down to 10 men, and Costa Rica, I felt, were kind of comfortable with their 1-goal lead from this point on. They didn't go and attack as much. They had a few nice plays and a few nice forays into New Zealand's penalty area, but nothing too serious. But as the business end of the match came up, New Zealand really cranked up the pressure. They were taking some really dangerous shots. Keylor Navas, man, he was called into a lot of really good saves, and in my opinion, he was the man of the match. He showed why he is the best goalkeeper from CONCACAF, one of the best goalkeepers of his generation. He really, really saved this team here. There was some great shots that in any other day, with any other keeper, probably would have nestled in the back of the net. But Costa Rica did just enough to hold off New Zealand, and they go through to the World Cup as the final team. I think New Zealand really surprised me. My prediction was that again, New Zealand wasn't going to be a walkover, but Costa Rica would comfortably win, even more so than Peru in my predictions. I thought that it would be 3 or 4-1 to Costa Rica. I thought that it'd be close as the match started out, but as the end of the match goes on and New Zealand becomes tired out, that Costa Rica will just score. Costa Rica would just pile up on the goals. That obviously didn't happen at all. New Zealand came and showed up to play. They played very well. And in some ways, you can argue that they were unlucky not to score. I'm sure some people will also say that New Zealand was arguably the better team. And I think that's a very good argument. I don't know if I would necessarily side with that. I think this game was just very 50-50. If anything, I mean, Costa Rica seemed a little more clinical with their chances, but still, it was super, super close. But in the end of the day, there had to be one winner, and that was Costa Rica. But New Zealand can leave with their heads held high. So anyway, guys, that has been my reaction to my predictions for the Intercontinental Playoffs. Let me know how you did. Did you get anything right? Did you get anything very wrong? Anything like that? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this video with a friend. And anyway, guys, my name is Brandon. This has been the Football Bloc. Hope you guys have a nice rest of your night.